Welcome back to Godwin. Today we're looking into the anatomy of the nephron, anatomy part 3. And in the last video, we defined the nephron as the functional unit of the kidney. So in a single kidney, there are about 1.3 million nephrons in a single kidney, which means in both kidneys, there are about 2.6 million nephrons. So one of the main functions of the nephron is the production and for excretion of urine. All right, so in today's video, we're going to be looking at into a brief overview of what the nephron is, the parts of the nephron, and the process of reabsorption, secretion, and filtration that goes on in the nephron. Just a brief overview about it. So we're looking more into details about this, the structures and function of the nephron in renal physiology. All right. So before we move into it, there are two types of nephron. We have the cortical nephron and the juxtamedullary nephron. So as you can see from the board here, the cortical nephron is when the glomerulus here, because this is glomerulus and this is the Bowman's capsule, is found in the middle of the cortex. So here, this line here is called the cortex medulla junction. All right, so from here downwards is the medulla, while from this junction upwards is the cortex. So in cortical nephron or intermediate nephron, the glomeruli is found in the middle of the cortex, while the loop, this is the loop of Henle, descends into the medulla. So this is the most common type of nephron, and it's found in about 80% of the population. All right. So in juxtamedullary nephron, the glomeruli lies adjacent to the cortex medulla junction. This is an example of it. While the loop of Henle descends down into the medulla, almost getting to the apex of the renal pyramid. Okay. So this these are the two types of nephrons found in the kidney. All right, so the parts of the nephron. Now in the last video we discussed how the renal artery comes in as the renal artery from lumbar vertebrae L1 and L2 comes into the kidney and branches into segmental arteries and giving off interlobar arteries. Then this interlobar arteries continues as the aqueous artery, and aqueous artery gives off the interlobular artery. Right. So this is the interlobular artery giving off an afferent arteriole which goes into the glomerulus. So this is the glomerular capillary. All right. While this gives off an efferent arteriole. So this cup-shaped structure that houses this glomerulus or glomerular capillary is known as the Bowman's capsule. So before that, let me quickly label these parts. All right, so here we have this as the interlobular artery, and this structure here is the afferent arteriole. The afferent arteriole. All right, so here is the glomerulus or the glomerular capillary. So I'm a little bit put that as G, as glomerulus. This is the efferent arteriole. Efferent arteriole. Why this cup-shaped structure is known as the Bowman's capsule. The Bowman's capsule. All right. So what really happens here is that blood coming from the afferent arteriole, okay, blood coming from the afferent arteriole comes into the glomerulus, and in the glomerulus have high hydrostatic pressure that filters out this blood plasma into the Bowman's space. So here we call here as the Bowman's space. All right, into the Bowman's space. So this part of the Bowman's space is known as the urinary pole. So here is the urinary pole. So materials that come into this Bowman's space are known as the filtrate or the ultrafiltrate. All right, so materials with high diameter cannot actually pass through this glomerulus, okay, and materials that are negatively charged cannot actually pass through this glomerulus into the Bowman's space, because in the basal lamina of this glomerulus we have heparan sulfate, which is a negatively charged macromolecule which prevents negatively charged particles from or materials from entering into. So we're going to be looking into other substances found in this lamina and also talking much about the glomerulus and the Bowman's capsule, much into details in renal physiology and their functional histology. All right, so the filtrate comes in here into the Bowman space. So there are three things that actually happens in the kidney, all right, particularly in the nephron. First is filtration. First, we have filtration, and this filtration occurs here in the glomerulus. So we have filtration first, and secondly, we have the reabsorption. Reabsorption, and we also have the secretion. So these are the three things that actually happens in the kidney: filtration, reabsorption, and secretion. So before we move into the part of the nephron, let's quickly talk about what is filtration, what is reabsorption, and what is secretion. All right, filtration is like what I've just explained here, filtering what based on their sizes and based on their charges. All right, so we filter them out into the Bowman space. All right, so these materials coming from the afferent artery are filtered out, and when they come into the Bowman space, we call them the filtrate because they've been filtered out now and they've been separated. All right, so now reabsorption is what taking what because this blood that is coming in from this afferent arteriole contains nutrients. It contains nutrients. Also, it contains waste too. All right, so the nutrients it contains, we are more interested in this nutrient it contains. So we reabsorb this nutrient back into the body because it is very, very important. All right, so we reabsorb it back into the body's reabsorption because we need it. Then secretion, materials that we don't need at all. We don't need these materials at all because if we allow them to accumulate in the body, they may become very toxic to the body. So we secrete it into the tubule, and the tubule carries it, and what we excrete it out from the collecting duct. So let me quickly look at this part. Okay. So this part now, this coiled structure here, all right, is known as the proximal convoluted tubule. The proximal convoluted tubule. All right. So here is the descending limb. The descending limb, and the descending limb has two parts. It has the thick descending limb and the thin descending limb. The thick descending and the thin descending. So here we call here the descending limb. Okay, while this loop here is known as the loop of Henle. The loop of Henle. All right, while here we call here the ascending limb. The ascending limb is also known, divided into two parts: the thick ascending limb and the thin ascending limb. So here we have the ascending limb. All right, so the thick descending limb is also known as the pars recta of the proximal convoluted tubule, while the thick ascending limb is also known as what? The pars recta of the distal convoluted tubule. All right, so here we have the distal convoluted tubule. All right, so and here, this is the last structure here we have here as the collecting duct. All right, so these are the parts of the nephron, and filtration, reabsorption, and secretion occurs here in the nephron. Filtration occurs here in the glomerulus. Reabsorption and secretion occurs in different parts of the nephron. All right, so let's now go into the process of reabsorption and the process of secretion. All right, so in the proximal convoluted tubule, when the filtrates have actually passed through the glomerulus into the Bowman's capsule, they pass through the urinary pole into the proximal convoluted tubule. So what happens there is that the materials or the nutrients that are very, very important for the body are being reabsorbed back into the body. Remember, the efferent arteriole comes here and goes around the nephron as the peritubular capillary, also forming the vasa recta. All right, we'll be looking into that in renal physiology also. All right, so these are reabsorbed back into the body. The nutrients that are contained in this blood plasma or the fluid that is filtered here is reabsorbed back into the body. All right, so let's look at the materials that are reabsorbed, which means they are important, and the materials that are secreted, which means these are waste. We don't need them anymore. All right, so they are secreted into the tubule, so we excrete them out as urine. All right, so the materials that are reabsorbed back into the body, which means they are very useful, I'll be writing them in the blue pen, while the materials that are not useful at all, which are the materials that are actually secreted into the tubule, I'll be writing them with the red pen. All right. So here reabsorption takes place. All right. So in this part, 100% of glucose and amino acids are reabsorbed. So we have here amino acids. All right. We have here amino acids. 100% is reabsorbed back here in the proximal convoluted tubule. Also glucose 100%. All right. And we also have water is reabsorbed here also. Water, about 65% of water is reabsorbed here. 65% is reabsorbed here. We also have just important important nutrients that are very, very important, are reabsorbed here. We also have calcium. Calcium ions are reabsorbed here. All right. We also have bicarbonates. Bicarbonates are what? Reabsorbed here also. Okay. So what are secreted here? What are the materials that are secreted here? So the materials that are secreted here includes organic materials. Organic materials. This may include your drugs, your antibiotics that you take. Have to be excreted because if we allow them to remain in the body, may accumulate and become toxic to the body, which is detrimental to the health. All right. So here we have organic materials such as your drugs and antibiotics, and we also have urea. Urea as ammonium. Urea as ammonium. We also have hydrogen ions. So these are the materials that are secreted into the tubule for excretion because they are not important. All right. So moving into the descending limb. Moving into the descending limb. All right. So in the descending limb, remember I told you the descending limb has what? The thick descending limb and the thin descending limb. So in the thin descending limb, all right, the thin descending limb has aquaporin channels, okay, which means they are permeable to water, specifically aquaporin 1. All right, we're talking much into it. Very, very interesting concept in renal physiology. All right, so here water is being reabsorbed back here. So water is reabsorbed in the thin descending limb. So moving now into the ascending limb. In the ascending limb, sodium ions are reabsorbed and also chloride ions are reabsorbed in the ascending limb. While in the thick ascending limb, we have the secretion of hydrogen ion. We also have the secretion here of hydrogen because we don't need them. All right. We don't need them because hydrogen ion will actually increase what? The acidity of the body. So we secrete them into the tubule. So we excrete them out as urine. All right. So coming now to the distal convoluted tubule, materials that are reabsorbed here are, we have the tetraosophosphates. Okay, we have calcium ions. We also have water. Water is reabsorbed here also. All right. Have water reabsorption on taking place here. All right. We also have the reabsorption of sodium chloride here. All right. The reabsorption of sodium chloride here takes place. So the materials that are secreted in the distal convoluted tubule now, in the distal convoluted tubule, materials that are secreted into this tubule, we have the hydrogen ion. Okay. We also have the ammonia that is secreted here. We also have potassium ion. Remember, in the proximal convoluted tubule, we have the reabsorption of potassium ion, but in the distal convoluted tubule, there's a secretion of what? Potassium ion. All right. So before that, the reabsorption of water in the distal convoluted tubule is under the influence of aldosterone. Aldosterone, we'll be talking about it in renal physiology though. All right. So it's under the influence of what? Aldosterone. All right. So moving now to the collecting duct. Materials that are reabsorbed in the collecting duct, because here is the final place for concentration of our urine. Okay. So it's here that determines whether we're forming a hypertonic urine or a hypotonic urine. All right. So here Water is what reabsorbed here, and the water reabsorption here is under the influence of antidiuretic hormone or vasopressin. All right, so the water reabsorption is under the influence of ADH, antidiuretic hormone. All right, so we also have the reabsorption of sodium ions. So the reabsorption of sodium ions also takes place here. Reabsorption of sodium ions takes place here. So these are the materials, the nutrients that are reabsorbed and the ways that are secreted into the tubule for us to excrete them out into the minor calyx, and it continues into the major calyx, then into the pelvis, then continues down into the ureter, into the urinary bladder before micturition. So this is just a brief overview of what the nephron actually does, what happens in the nephron, the parts of the nephron, and what is actually going on in the nephron. Not much into details, but we're looking much into details into what really happens in the nephron, the parts of the nephron, and the cells that are found in these different parts of the nephron in renal physiology and its functional histology. So if you really enjoyed this video, please subscribe to this YouTube channel for more videos, and please you can leave a comment in the comment section below, and please give us a thumbs up if you really enjoyed this video.